Hey everybody, how are you doing? This is Gerónimo from the Beyond Taboo podcast, and I'm here joined by Paul, Aaron, Travis. How are you doing, Paul?
Doing great. Glad to be here.
Nice to hear that. Thanks for coming. Paul is a certified sexologist and a sex educator, also founder of the School for Love and School for Lovers,
Yep.
which we'll be hearing more about soon. How are you doing? How are you doing,
I'm
Paul?
doing
Where are
great.
you calling
I'm doing
from?
great. I live on a little island called Bainbridge Island. It's west of Seattle, and
Uh
the
huh.
weather is awesome. And I've just launched my first book. So
Nice.
everything is
Congratulations.
just very exciting. It's called The Spark You've Been Missing: Unmask
Hmm.
Disconnection and
Hmm.
Deepen Relationships using the Authentacy framework. And the Authentacy framework is something that I've developed over teaching spiritual singles over 40 how to date with more effectiveness and better results and getting fantabulous connections with people and bypassing what I call non-versation. It's just epidemic in, or it's just,
That's interesting.
yeah.
That's interesting. I wonder already what's the spark I'm missing. So I'll shoot you more questions
Yeah,
in a moment.
yeah.
You got me intrigued already. But to start, I was wondering, Paul. I know a little bit about your story from the first time we talked,
Yeah.
but I'd love to hear about, well, why sexology? Why sexology in how? How did it all
Yeah.
started?
So, um, rewinding, I actually have been doing interpersonal work and intrapersonal work for decades. I in my 20s got involved in facilitating men's groups, and of course, out of that comes everything from challenges in relationships, challenges in work life, um, and so then fast forward, um, I was working in a corporate job, and I got laid off, and I realized around the beginning of COVID, and I realized this is the time I've been looking for. I finally get to branch out on my own and use what I've learned and help people going into what was a very scary time. It was not just the
For sure.
regular challenges of trying to create a new relationship. It was now, the mask, and we couldn't be close to people, and I saw so many people freaking out, and I've always loved dating. And so I decided that was my mission. And in the course of doing that, I saw so much dysfunction and fear and issues in our sex lives that I started to get certified in sex education. And coincidentally, Forbes magazine came out with a statistic right around that time, about 2 years ago, that said that
Okay.
90% of American adults felt that they did not get the sex education that was able to prepare them for real world relationships. And so I just kind of
Wow.
had this great feeling in my heart, like I'm in the right place at the right
Yeah.
time,
I
bringing
mean,
the
that's a
right
huge
message to
number.
people. Yeah, yeah,
90%. That's unbelievable.
yeah.
But makes sense though. Makes sense though. So how did it go? Those, I mean, first experiences when you got certified and you finally were able to help these people, help men. I'm not sure if you started with mostly men or couples.
I actually started with singles in of all genders, and then after a couple years of teaching that class, which is called the Great Dating Reset, and that's at the School for Love. As I mentioned to you, I got certified as I was getting certified. Then I started the School for Lovers. So, School for Love is about how we connect with others, how we build trust. The whole idea of authenticity is to lean into our authenticity and then to be able to welcome somebody else in intimacy. That intimacy means close.
That's true. Okay.
So you were asking about gender, and in the course of that process, I realized just how much my past work with men was needed now, and how many people in midlife have a death, either a death of a relationship, or a death of a parent, or a death of a career or a business. And any one of those can be completely traumatizing. And it's
Oh, for sure.
because I've seen it and I've felt it, how hard it is to get back up on our feet. And so the Reground and Rebound program was born to help men. So my dating programs are for all genders. Reground and Rebound is for men. And now out of this book, The Spark You've Been Missing, about Authentacy, I'm going to have an Authentacy live program that will help people go through the exercises and practice being more real and looking to connect more, because we're going through an epidemic of disconnection, shallowness, and loneliness. And that's what.
Well, now that you mentioned that, Paul, sorry to cut you. You mentioned dating a couple of times. I'm sure things have changed a lot since, well, COVID. But I'd love to hear more about how you see the dating world, how you see dating now for society, from COVID to today. Do you see any differences? What's the main problems? You mentioned already this epidemic, but I'd love to hear more about your diagnosis of the whole situation we're living now.
Yeah, so, a very common question is, what's the best dating app I should use? And I kind of take a step backward and I say, like, what's changed? You were asking, like, what's different now than 5 years ago? Well, for sure, AI is changing everything in our world, and so that means that many of the dating profiles that we engage with aren't actually real people. They're scammers who have just generated a bunch of pictures and content to
Wow.
lure people in. There's also a dynamic of dating apps are at odds. I actually have a list of 33 what I call obstacles in the dating world, and that's in the book. And and
Let's hear
so,
a couple of those.
well, one of them is so one, we talk about AI. Another one is that the dating services, the dating apps goals are in direct contrast to, they're not aligned with individuals' goals. The dating app companies make money by us paying them more every single month. So they're actually incented for us to not have good relations. And so my belief
Makes
is that,
sense.
that they basically they regurgitate, they recycle people who left the platform years ago, but unless you actually go through very laborious steps, your profile is still there, and they're still using it to market to other people who might be interested in that person, even though that person's no longer on the system.
That's true. I never
So,
thought of it that way, but you're completely right. That's true.
and then we have turned into such a consumeristic, instant success, instant gratification society that everything these days is oriented towards swipe left or swipe right, right? Tinder popularized that.
Yeah.
And yet, there's a fascinating study. I have a lot of studies in the book, and one of them talks about how people's perception of a profile goes up dramatically about intelligence and about creativity when they actually write something that's meaningful and sharing what they're all about. And so,
That's the hard part.
it is hard and it takes work and it's so worth it. It's kind of like, the hard part about figuring out what we want to be when we grow up. It's like it is hard,
That's
but
true.
it's worth
That's
it
true.
because
It's worth
otherwise
it.
we're, you know, putting in miles to get to a city we never really wanted to get to. It was just sort of there. And there's a wonderful statistic about the accuracy of jet airplanes when they're going from, for example, New York to LA. I think it's like 95% of the time they're actually off course. So there's always course correction. They're off a little bit, they course correct. They're off a little bit, then they course correct. And I think that's what our lives are about as well. And so when we go through the work of figuring out what makes us tick and what has really been meaningful and heartwarming in relationships, then we're able to say, okay, those are the kind of things that are meaningful to me. Not like I want to recreate that exact person, but I want to have these kind of experiences. Too many people, back to your, question, what's wrong today? I think people have these checklists like he's got to be 6'2" or above, and he has to make,
Have a
$500,000.
car, yeah, for
Right?
sure.
And when in the Great Dating Reset, we talk about one layer of abstraction from that. We talk about like how much do we laugh, right? I want to be in a relationship where my heart and my nervous system feels comfortable just sitting with somebody and knowing that neither of us have to talk. We can just be looking at a sunset. So
No, that's true. I now I get what you mean with checklist, because you might think, okay, things have changed from the past, I mean, I'm not sure over there, but people is getting less. I'm not sure, I'm not saying this is the
yep,
solution,
yep,
but people is getting less married, um, from an approach where it's what you got to do, like
right.
that's the next step,
It's
and the
history.
person you're looking for is just a set of different boxes you can check. Like you said, it has to have this detail or whatever, and we're worrying less or caring less actually about, yeah, like you said, I guess real connections, sharing, and doing things for love rather than because it feels right to do it, and it's the next thing to do, like a sort of script in a sense.
That's living by a standard or a societal narrative that we didn't necessarily create. Now, it's not that it's bad to subscribe to that. Many people do. I did. I got through high school. I went through college. I got a job. I found a girlfriend. I got engaged. Well, actually, I broke a rule there. I broke my engagement because I realized it wasn't the right person. Then I got married. And after 20 years, we weren't meant to be together. And so that felt like a failure to both of us. And yet, she's a lot happier. I'm a lot happier. We've grown in very different directions, but we're still friends. Like, it was very important
That's
to me
nice.
to, to not repeat all my family history or my family tree of being toxic with one another. Just because we're not living together doesn't mean we have to be toxic. So we're very good at co-parenting our children. Our children live, I mean, she and I live on the same island, and our children live in Seattle. We both visit.
Nice.
It's very good, and
Ideal.
it's no reason that either of us to take each other down. Yeah,
That's nice. That's nice. Congratulations.
thanks.
Um, to go deeper on the whole dating topic, the other day I was scrolling and stumbled upon a guy with the following reflection, which I felt at some point of my life. But I feel I'd love to hear about your perspective. But I also feel that apart from what you're saying about dating apps of swiping left or right or whatever, there's a sense or there's a feeling of competition. Like feels like highly competitive. And I'm not saying it should be easier for sure. Like you said, you have to put some effort on your description, on that first message to, I don't know, go deeper than just say how you doing.
A lot of
But
people
at the
do
same,
exactly what you're saying.
yeah, I know. But at the same time, I don't know. It's like dating has a new set of rules because it's actually the app rules rather than something that can result from, I don't know, just life and drifting through the street or whatever place, and you just find someone and start talking. Now you're within a different framework, and probably the person you're talking already received, I don't know, 30 more messages. So in a sense, what I'm trying to say, it can be frustrating for many.
Absolutely.
It can.
Absolutely. I think what you're now I think I understand what your point was about competitive
Yeah,
because
sorry
there's so
for
much.
the long curve.
Well, I think what you're getting as, and correct me if I'm off, but I think you're saying there's so much other choice that it feels like, how am I going to stand out?
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah, and I think that is true. It's about our bigger lives, right? Our the statistic that I put into the book is that 30 30 years ago, I think either 30 or 40 years ago, we had about 2,000 advertising messages bombarding us each day. Now it's 10,000. 10,000
Wow.
messages. Right? We're on the internet, we're driving along, we see billboards or whatever it is, we're on the radio, and so it's I think life is much more busy. It takes a lot of work to calm our nervous system down and just be grounded. And then
That's true.
when we're in this delicate place of like, I really would like to meet somebody, I'd really like to have some companionship, then, like you say, we know that, we're messaging someone and they've probably got 30, 50, 100 other messages. And, like, I think what you hinted at is sort of like this fantasy of like the old days where we would just like
Yeah.
walk into a park and we'd meet somebody and strike up a conversation. It's
Which
so
can still happen.
It can
Which can
totally
still
still
happen.
happen. It's rare, but I think like in not in the book, but in the Great Dating Reset, we talk about strategies for that. Like, what are things, back to the whole notion of like what makes me happy? What are things that make me happy? Do those, do more of those, because those are the places where other people who are happy doing that thing will be. Like if I really enjoy frisbee and I go and find a place where there's a whole bunch of people playing ultimate frisbee or just
Exactly.
frisbee on the out on
That's
the
great
park,
advice, actually.
right? So that's where we can put ourselves, instead of just into a random place or like, hey, I'm in a grocery store, hopefully I'll meet somebody, right? Um, but intentionality and thinking, what are the things that are important to me? Like I like swing dancing, so I go to a place where there's swing dancing, and then I get a chance to meet other people who like swing dancing. Another thing is, kind of going to places. So one is activities, and then one is like, hey, if I like to be at the beach, maybe other people who are at the beach, there's kind of increasing those chances. And then
Yeah, for
online
sure.
groups, right? So it doesn't have to be the dating apps. I personally like dating apps because of the ability to filter. I like, for example, I'm shorter than average, and many potential dates don't they're not interested in that. I'd rather be able to filter out and know that somebody knows how tall I am rather than it being a last minute surprise and we've already cultivated a conversation
Yeah,
and oh,
that's true.
that's
You
not.
have more control. You have more control on the person you're looking for, in a
Yeah.
sense. I mean, you're probably sacrificing something
Yep.
because who knows? I don't know. Maybe something short could be the love of your life.
Totally.
But at the same time, yeah, you have more control, and it intends to make things easier when it comes to dating. At the same time, I get people is feeling quite the contrary. So I think it's great to have resources like your book
Yeah.
to actually help people befriend the whole idea of dating online. At the same time, I'm not sure you're aware, but over here, and probably over there too, there are lots of new initiatives are rising, the type of concept, for example, have dinner with strangers. Fill out a profile and we'll match you with a set of people that will be keen to your way of thinking or whatever interest you have. And I don't know, I think it's interesting, those new initiatives, but I think it falls into your advice of inhabiting places where there's other people that enjoy what you enjoy, actually.
Yeah, there are speed dating companies here, same kind of thing, but on a smaller basis, right? 1-to-1 versus maybe like 6 people at a table. And in fact, the book has a chapter because this framework of authenticity, that is again, authenticity and intimacy, shows up in many different kinds of relationships. Romantic relationships, like long-term relationships. So many relationships get old and stale. There's many social scientists who say, okay, at 7 years, that's kind of a big test, and then 10 years at a big test. And some people think, well, okay, 1 year is a big test, and maybe 3 years is a big test. After a while, we get into these habits, and it's hard to break out and actually rekindle, like we were talking about, the spark. So one is long-term relationships, and then there's a chapter about dating and creating new relationships, and how do we do that in a way where we're most connected so that we feel most a sense of belonging and a sense of realness rather than just superficial connection and kind of like hoping to actually get something that's meaningful someday. And then there's a section on platonic relationships, co-workers and family and friends. So I try to bring this framework of authenticity to people wherever they are.
I think that word is very important, authenticity. I feel like as a society, we're sort of missing a bit how fulfilling can be the experience of knowing another person in creating a relationship, a bond. I feel like society is tending to sort of get that possibility just as an emotional need that can be fulfilled by even an AI partner, I mean, and that's troubling you because I'm not sure you're aware that, I'm not sure if you saw the movie Her. Well, I feel like a little bit day by day society is shifting towards that word, we are so entangled with our own insecurities and our anxieties and our own isolation that these new ideas are emerging and people are actually, making relationships with AI partners. Japan is a big country for that. There's a lot of people with relationship issues and meeting new people. Just as anecdotal, the day that Grok on X, was released, the partner feature where you get to talk with an avatar. Well, the servers in Japan, they fall. I mean, they broke records because everyone wanted to, have their own AI girlfriend. So clearly, and I guess this is related to the epidemic you mentioning because I'd love to hear more about it. There's something going on. There's something huge going on.
What is fascinating, I basically unfold this in the first few chapters of the book, and I talk about these 3 factors: shallowness, disconnection, and loneliness. And the fascinating thing is that I always thought, until 5 years ago, loneliness was about somebody who sort of was a loner. They were off in the corner by themselves, and that's not what loneliness is about. At least when we talk about, for example, the US Surgeon General says that loneliness is now an epidemic that is as dangerous as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. And I bring that up because sometimes it's easy to say, oh, lonely, emotional, something. But when we say 15 cigarettes a day, we know how many people died of lung cancer. So taking that seriously, and he's not talking about somebody who's a loner. He's talking about not having the kind of heart connection, not kind of having the feeling of being seen and truly known, not having somebody. The statistics I bring up in the book are that 49% of adults have 3 or fewer friends. And the amount of time that we spend with those friends now compared to each of the last 3 decades, it's gone down to a quarter of what it used to be. And I think it goes right to what you're saying. Like, people are so much on their computers, and now they can do things, online, that they don't actually have to talk to somebody. They can just have a conversation with a bot. And
Yeah,
that
indeed.
that meaning of that relationship, it is something that I have kind of bolted together to show people that this combination of authenticity and intimacy, what I call authentimacy, is the the antidote to this epidemic. And you were talking about how important authenticity is, and I'll share a little vignette from the
Please,
book.
please.
When we get in touch, I try to use these kind of 2 overlapping circles. So when we think about, this is who I think I am, who I know myself to be, as best as I know myself, as I can like align with, this is the person, this is the me that I share with other people. And so to the degree that I can like line that up and say, okay, now I'm not sure how to do it with the camera, but the integrity is when there's congruence between who I know myself to be and who I share myself to be. But that doesn't necessarily mean that I'm open to somebody really knowing, that I'm really trusting other people. So that's the part of intimacy where it's about feeling safe, and it's about feeling like somebody else gets me. So that's why I've put all of this together as this framework to combat this epidemic of really shallow, disconnected, and lonely interactions that so many people go day after day after day hoping, maybe today I'll change it, and they don't really have any strategy on how that's going to happen.
Well, that's very interesting, Paul. And just to put these into practical terms, let's say, for example, we're talking about a guy who's feeling this way right now.
Yeah.
What would be like the first steps you could suggest to a person that's having so much trouble in finding, well, someone, but at the same time, I feel themselves, because from what you're saying, from your framework and being aligned from what you perceive from yourself and what others perceive, I guess it's also linked, So what would you suggest to someone?
Well, the first thing I would do is, or I would encourage, is go and take the Authentacy quiz that I've set up on schoolforlove.com. It takes 4 or 5 minutes, 10 questions, and it'll give you a pointer to one of 4 quadrants. There's a quadrant where it's lower on the authenticity and lower on the intimacy scale. There's one that's higher on the intimacy and higher on the authenticity scale, and there's one that's, more authentic and lower intimacy, and higher intimacy and lower authenticity. So there's 4 different quadrants, and then I give some suggestions to help, because really where we we were talking about the airplane going from New York to LA. Like, if we weren't in New York, if we were actually in Central America, we wouldn't take the same directions. We would be going a different way. And so it's important to know not only where I want to go, but where I am now. And then, the book talks about exercises like, instead of answering when somebody says, how are you today? Almost always people say good or fine. I don't know, in your culture maybe it's slightly different, but here that's like 98% of what people say. They don't really want to get into
Yeah.
the conversation, even though that's what how are you or how are you today, that's what it was meant to be, is like, let's talk. And people just kind of brush it off. I'm fine, how are you? I'm fine. And so, to say something like, I didn't sleep well, and I'm thinking maybe I may not be able to get through this meeting that I'm going to have this afternoon, or actually showing some vulnerability, or showing some, like, wanting to disclose something, rather than kind of, I'm fine. Let's not pay attention to me. That's one thing that I would say. And then, we're talking about, like, how do we use a technique to increase our intimacy. And again, intimacy not being sexuality, intimacy being closeness, is, when somebody might say, like, I I was bothered by something you said, right?
Okay.
We can either hear that and say, okay, fine, I won't talk to you again, or we can say, okay, fine, I won't message you again, or we can take that in and say, wow, it must have been risky to tell me that. Thank you for telling me that. Let me think on that and see how I can. I don't know how to do it any better right now, but I'll think about it. Thank you for giving me that feedback. I mean, so much. We're talking about existing, long-term relationships. Like, how many times have you heard people get into that same kind of conversation?
No, that's right. I was thinking right now about it, and you're right. I mean, we totally lack of those instances. I mean, that sort of openness of showing vulnerability. And so I think that's great advice, actually, and I guess it involves somehow connecting with your feelings, and being honest about them to yourself and to others.
And
So
and
sounds
and
like
in
a
that
great
order,
first
right?
step.
It's like, sometimes, whoa, to be honest with somebody else about my feelings. No, no, no. Let's first start with, like, am I even honest with myself? And then
Yeah,
once we
makes
are able
sense.
to say, okay, I am feeling nervous. What do I want to do about that? Do I want to, do I want to share that with this person, or do I want to just say, okay, I need to go and, I may not have ever meditated before, but maybe I can just take 10 deep breaths, and then maybe, that. I think you talked about what's different now than 5 years ago, or, earlier. I think one of the things that neuroscience is showing us is that we've gotten really good at being in our heads, and yet our bodies are where those feelings are stored, and where the trauma, it doesn't have to be that we, I mean, there's such different levels of trauma, but, everybody has some sort of baggage that they carry from
For
past
sure.
relationships or from childhood, and so those kind of things mean that our opportunity to heal and to be more whole and healthy is really in taking care of our bodies, both our, the physiological side, and then the kind of emotional side. There's an old saying that the belly is the third gut. It's not just the brain and it's not just the heart, but it's the belly where, feelings are deeply stored. Okay, I don't know where I was off on a tangent there.
No. I like where you're going.
Yeah.
I was wondering, you mentioned shallowness.
Mhm.
Um, where do you think that this shallowness is coming from? I mean, what are the baselines that's generating so much, well, this feeling and this shallowness after all.
Yeah. So I kind of equate the shallowness with superficiality, with
Okay.
surface level interactions. And so I think part of it, and the book, goes into a lot more detail, but the big picture is we're stressed for time more than ever before. And most people have so many things on their to-do list. It's kind of easier to just have a quick interaction. It's so much easier to have a text with somebody and say, hey, I'll meet you over there, or I can't meet today, rather than to say, hey, I'm struggling with, I can't feed my baby because we don't have enough money to, or something, right? It's like there's something behind every message, and the superficiality, part of it comes from time demands, and part of it comes from bandwidth. Like I can't think about anything else because I've got too many things to focus on. And then we talked about, fear of like, if I really get into that feeling, I might fall apart. I might start crying. I can't do that.
Yeah,
So
that's true.
I think those are
I,
some of
I
the main reasons.
I guess also this superficiality could be related. I get the feeling that as a society, as individuals, lately tend to be, well, you mentioned this already, like disconnected, but I'm saying disconnected in terms of we are too much into our own stuff, like it's so hard, and I see this day to day, I mean, for example, this is a conversation I usually have with my girlfriend, and it has become a virtue in people when we actually know someone that actually cares and makes questions, and I feel that's a vital part of interacting, like I sometimes get along with my friends, in going back to the past. I see a difference, like when meeting, you sort of see this lack of interest, and I'm not saying, I'm not blaming anyone because it's something we are all living in, we're all living through, but there's a huge lack of interest in the other, I feel.
And so, I know we're going to be wrapping up here, but as you talk about like what causes the shallowness, I don't have all the answers. I've done a lot of research, and I've shared some of the points. But to your point, you're seeing that you care for somebody and that they're maybe not available anymore. I mentioned to you that time spent with friends has gone down dramatically. I've seen it in my own life. I've been trying to get together with a friend who I knew 20 years ago, and a couple of times I've said, hey, I'm going to be in Seattle. Let's get together and have coffee or tea or dinner. And sometimes he doesn't even reply. And sometimes he says, oh, we'll have to try next time. And at some point I say, okay, there just isn't the interest, the reciprocity in wanting to reconnect with me. And I'm not going to force anybody to reconnect with me.
No, for sure. For
Offer,
sure.
hey, I was thinking about you. I'd love to reconnect. And that some people just don't have the bandwidth anymore. As I mentioned,
Yeah.
you
That's a lovely message, by the way. A lovely way to put it.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. You're right. I mean, I'm very interested in your book, Paul.
Thanks. Yeah.
Let's add that link on the podcast description, on the episode description,
That's great.
so everybody can give it a read and hopefully tell us what they think about it. And I also wanted to ask you. Sure.
I was just going
Go
to say,
ahead.
and just because of the way that I read now. Most of my reading is on audiobook, and so I'm going to
Oh,
have the audiobook. It's
that's
been really
great to
important
know,
to me to have the
actually.
audiobook come out at the same time as the print book.
No, that's a very smart decision.
Yeah.
I think that's great. That's great. Paul, before wrapping up, I wanted to ask you a little bit about any courses you have in School for Lovers that you might want to recommend to our listeners.
Well, it's interesting that you say that because I just knowing the limitations of one person and how I've come out with this book, and I'm going to have other books, and the authentic. Did this just freeze? Okay, just checking. The my experience is that so many people, the statistics are something like 95% of the books that are purchased are never actually finished. People don't actually read all of them, and so I'll have this Authentacy live program so that people can actually practice connecting with one another.
Oh, wow.
Reground and Rebound is the men's program I talked about, and the Great Dating Reset is also happening. And then there will be others. I think coming back to your question, I've just done a special relationship with a company where they've made more sex education tapes than I could possibly make in the next year. And so that's also
Wow.
available on School for Lovers at a really nice 50% discount.
Oh, I saw that.
Yeah.
Oh my God, yes, I
Yeah.
think.
I represent OMGS. OMGS is wonderful, and it's pretty focused um, on supporting men in doing a better job of pleasing a feminine lover. Educated is the one that I'm referring to. It's much
Okay.
more European and global, and they have a much broader audience, not broader audience, a broader course content. They have everything from um, kink to squirting to um,
Oh, wow.
different
That's interesting.
different self-pleasuring techniques, both for a penis owner and for a vulva owner. There are not thoughts, but there are concepts like non-monogamy. There are concepts like relationship anarchy. There's 150 courses in there. I was actually looking at it just the other night. There's wonderful, very gentle approaches to anal play. Um, I could go on and on. It's a very long list, and I'd highly recommend it. Yeah, it's on
Oh, thanks.
schoolforlove.com.
Thanks for the recommendation. First time I hear about them,
Yeah,
so I'll certainly check it out.
yeah,
And add the link to your site so people can also look at it.
super.
So, Paul,
I really enjoyed
thanks a
talking to you.
lot.
Yeah,
Yeah, this conversation was great, very interesting. People, you already know, guys. Paul's book is available on the link below. So, thanks, Paul, again. Thanks, everybody, for watching us. And let's be in touch soon. I really had some
I
fun.
had a great time, and I wish everybody joy and meaning in their life, and I hope that my book can help.
Thanks for that, Paul.
Okay,
Let's be in touch. Bye bye.
bye.